Okay, we're up to Daf Yud Aleph Amid Aleph, and the Mishnah was discussing birds. Again, in those days, if you wanted to eat, it had to be very fresh. They didn't have refrigeration. They would go ahead, they would get their chickens or their birds, they would shech them on Yontif. However, they had to be prepared before Yontif. That's called, Hasmana, they would have to prepare things. So let's say you prepared birds and you left them, you left three, you prepared two and you found three. So we said a chiddush that we're going to say the other two flew the coop and not one joined. However, if you left masmin three and you left two, we'll say that one flew the coop and those two that remain are from the original. And we said that was a machloikas between Rabbi and the Chachamim regarding money left in a purse of Ma'aser Sheni. That was a long-winded Gemara. The Gemara the Mishnah then described if you were mazing them, you said you found them in the nest and you said A and B, and then you come on Yontif and you find two in front of the nest. We said that those are not the same. We're going to say the two original ones flew the coop, and those two that you have now are the ones that are muktzah, literally muktzah because you didn't set them aside. That's what the Mishnah said. It says Yud Aleph and Aleph were at the top. Lema Messiah, when it says B'soich HaKan and Motzlef Ne'akan, you prepared them in the kan. You said that these birds should be prepared for tomorrow, and in fact, they found them in front of the nest. Then they're also, we're going to say that these are not the birds the same birds. Lema Messiah, Reb Chanina, Dam Reb Chanina, Roiv v'Karoiv Hoylach Acha HaRoiv. When you have majority or proximity, you go after the majority. We saw this the other day. I'll say it over again. It's a very interesting way to go ahead and be mavara. When we have a suffix, we have something called suffix. You don't know what the halacha is. So we go after Roiv, you go after the majority. The classic cases, you have 9 butcher shops in the 10 butcher shops in the city, 9 sell kosher meat, 1 sells treifa meat. If you find it in the street, we'll go after the majority of the butcher shops and say the meat is kosher. Also, we had Masechta Shkolim. There's 13 different types of pushkis, and if you find money in a certain place, we'll say it's to the pushka that's closest to. So that's an example of karev. So roiv would be majority, and karev would be what's called proximity. So let's get over here. Let's look at our shiloh over here. You have a nest, and in the nest you prepare 2 birds. You prepare 2 birds in this nest. You find in front of the nest, you find 2 birds. And we said it's usher. If you go after proximity, l'chorah, they should be the same birds because they're the closest to the nest. If you go after roiv, then we'll say these 2 birds that you prepared are not the majority of the olam. They're not the majority of the world. So obviously over here when we're saying that Well, over here when we're saying that you go after the rest of the world, and you'll say the 2 other birds, we can be placed at the shaila that you're going after roiv. That's what we want to say. Says the Gemara again one more time. Says Rava, Lema Messiah, the fact that you say the 2 originals left and that we don't go after Karev, and then we had 2 took their place, they go after the majority of the world, they came from wherever. It's Messiah Reb Chanina, the Amar Reb Chanina, when you have a choice of going after Rov or for Karev, Halachacha Rov, you go after the majority. Rabbi says Abaye, no, the daf. Says Abaye, it's speaking where there was a daf in front of the roost. In other words, we said the other day that there was a little platform where the birds would go and hang out. They would all land, all birds would land there. Now they wouldn't go into the actual nest, into the house itself, because the birds in the house itself will get angry and they'll go ahead and they'll fight with the birds. What would the birds on the outside do? They would wait for the other birds to leave and then they would take their place. So once there's a daf, no longer is there a karoiv. Everything is karoiv because any bird's landing there. So you have no raya that you're going after the majority because those birds are also karoiv. Because why? Because there is a place where they can be close, just like you wanted to say the ones in the kan. You found them in front of the kan with karoiv. Once you have a daf, you have all the birds flying in. They're karoiv also. So you have no raya that you go after roiv. Kenzan, you go after karoiv as well. It says. Rabbi gives a different teretz. You know what we're speaking about over here? We're speaking about 2 nests, one above the other, a duplex cuckoo house, right? One above the other. And you went you went ahead and in the lower house, you said, I want those birds for tomorrow. So you prepared them to eat in the lower house. V'lo yizimin be'elyoina, but you didn't prepare the upper house. Umatza b'tachtoina, and the next day you find birds in the tachtoina, but none in the elyoina. V'lo matza be'elyoina. Now, why don't we say they're the same birds that I prepared? Because after all, I prepared the what? The lower ones. And there are lower ones there. The asrinon, we'll say it's asa. Because what are we going to say, guys? The lower ones flew the coop, and the upper ones took their place. Right? That's daminon hanach azle la'alma. The ones I prepared, they flew the coop. They're no longer there. The hanach, and the ones that are there now, ishtarvu ve'ishtarva v'nachas. They came down from their perch that was higher, and they landed there. Ela afilu, not only in that case, ela afilu zimen be'elyoina. You prepared the upper one. V'lo zimen b'tachtoina, but you didn't prepare the lower one. Ubo umatze be'elyoina. And you come and you find the lower one empty and two in the upper one. So the svarum would be that it's much difficult for a little bird to get up. So must be that the ones in the Elyona are the ones I prepared the day before. Because to go down is no big deal, but to go up for little birds is a big deal. So I might think that what? Since I prepared in the upper one and I found in the upper one, I just didn't find in the lower one, I might think it's mutter. I might think those are the birds and I could use them on Yontif. Kamashmalon, that is still asa. Hanachnami asiri, the ones in the upper perch and the upper nest are still asa. The amrinon hanach azli la'alma, the ones that I prepared flew the coop. V'hanach seruchim sarach v'sliku, and the other ones they went up. It's so interesting. Even though we're very makel when it comes to Simchas Yontif, over here, the possibility is strong possibility, since birds come and go, that these are not the same birds, despite the fact we found them in the same place. Very interesting chumrah of the Mishnah. Now, if the only game in town is that khan, is that nest, and you find it in front of the nest, then it's mutter. What's exactly the case? If it's being of birds that are capable of flight, 1 second. Once they're capable of flight, one nest is not a riot, it's the same birds, because after all, they can fly in, fly out. We just saw the case, up, below, worry about them leaving, coming and going. So if we're speaking about birds that can come and go, so why would you say it's mutter? I could say the same thing, that those birds that you found are not the same birds as yesterday. Ella, it must be speaking, bimit dadin, must be birds that hop around. They must be birds that are not capable of flight. Now, so if it's the only game in town, it's mutter. Now, what does it mean the only game in town? What's the distance to be the only game in town? If you have another nest within 50 amas, they'll hop away, and therefore what? The other ones can hop in, and therefore they're usher. Then pshita the mutarim. Good. So the Gemara asks the kasha now. What does it mean that the mutter? If you're telling me there's a khan that's within 50, why isn't mutter? I could say they hopped away. If it's more than that, then it's pasha that it's mutter. So what's the chiddush? So on that, the Gemara answers, you do have a khan within chamishimama regarding distance, but not regarding sight. How is that possible that you could be within 60 amas in proximity, but not in sight? Okay, going the kaima b'keren zovius. You have guys, over here, this has been 50 amas. I have a khan over here and a khan over here. So I prepared it over here, let's say. I prepared it over here, and this is within 50 amas. Now the bird's going to go up to here, but as we're going to see, the nature of the bird is it'll always turn around to see its nest. It'll never go farther than it can see its nest. So therefore, the chiddush is that even though it's been 50 amas, since to go over here around the corner, it would lose sight of its nest. In that situation, we don't say what? That it's a different bird. Says the Gemara, it is b'tei chamishim. You want a chiddush? Okay, going the kaima b'keren zavius. It's in the keren zavius, it's in the corner. So the tema, You might think that it hops away and it's not the same birds now. Kimash Malon Mishnah, Kol Heichad Medadada, Chazi Lakanya, Medada. As long as it can hop and turn around and see its kan, it'll continue hopping. If it can't see its kan, Loy Medada, it will not continue hopping. So that's the case of the Mishnah. You mezim in mitaych the kan, you have another kan within 50, and it's going to hop, but it won't. It's not. We will say this chiddush that it doesn't hop beyond that point because it can't. It won't lose sight of its nest, and therefore it is muta. We'll say those are the same birds. But if they were flying birds, ein nachanami would be asa. You have no raya. It's the same birds that I prepared. Okay. We are going through the machloikas Beisham Beisilo regarding Yontif, Simchas Yontif, different things. And one of the things we mentioned in Friday's Gemara was using a kli shemalachtei le'isser for something that's mutter. Now, you mutter to chop meat on Yontif. You can shecht it, chop it, flatten it, do whatever you want with it. Now, there's something called an eli. An eli is a pestle. It's a wood that you use to clap on spice. Now, it's also to clap spice on Yontif, to go ahead and crush it. That's again, there's ein bein Shabbos liyontif ella. Shabbos, the Isser is oichel nefesh bovad. Shabbos, in addition, is an Issa karis, and that's a lav. But it'd be also to go ahead and use an eli. So now, can you move it? So it's very similar to a case, guys, of a hammer, using a hammer to go ahead and break a nut. Right now, a hammer is a klishim lachta le'isla, but the breaking a nut is permitted. It's derech achila. So that's tzarech gufoy. I need the hammer, but not for the purpose of the hammer. So who adin? I need the pestle, but not for the purpose of the pestle. Says the Gemara. You cannot go ahead and take the pestle, to go ahead and cut on it. Basar. He doesn't let you move it, right? He doesn't let you move it. Says Rashi. Look at Rashi. First wide line. Beishami seems to say that a lot that you can't take it. We'll see Tosfos in a second. Beisil matirin. And Beisil says it's muta. Okay? Now, we learned in Masechta Shabbos that a klisha melachtei le'issa, right, is tzorech gufa is muta. And Beishami didn't argue on that. So why is he arguing over here? Now, this is in Ilchos Muktzah, guys. One of the cardinal rules is a klisha melachtei le'issa, tzorech gufa oy mekomo, but you need it for itself or its place, you're permitted to move it. So why would Beishami argue? L'chari, this is a klisha melachtei le'issa, the pestle, to go ahead and crush spices. You need it for gufa. Why would he also? So let's see Tosfos. Ein noitlin ha'eli v'tema hatzorech legufa. You need the body of the pestle. The whole klisha tzorech legufay oilim kaimai afilu melachtei lesser noitlin I b'yomtiv. So the great kasha. The Yeshlema says Tosfos the perikol hakelim mukminan le b'muktzi sheyesh by chesaron kiss the kli alma moida the asa kigoin siche ziri mizuri the kapralayu. Okay, Tosfos is machadish. This pestle is not stam a kli shemalachtei lista. It's a kli sheyesh by chesaron kiss. If you have something that's expensive, right, you're not able to go ahead and move that, guys. I would think, guys, if you left your cell phone is an expensive item. If you would leave it on your chair on Shabbos, I don't think you'll be able to move it off the chair. It's a people are makbid on that. So over here, since it's people are he's learning it's a klisha malachte isser, so they certain kiss, you won't be able to move it. Conversely, you have to say Beis Hillel would hold, since it's Simchas Yontif, it'd be permitted. In other words, the heter of Simchas Yontif would allow me to move the pestle, despite the fact that it's a klisha malachli le'isser. Simchas Yontif would override it. So that's a whole different way to look at the Mishnah, right? It's not a klisha malachli le'isser, because that would be a problem. But it's a klisha she'asamach chesaron kiss. You're worried about taking a loss. The case is the moil's knife. The moil can't move his knife, because it's why it's expensive. Okay, the second din of the Mishnah, the second din is about regarding spreading a hide. You can't go ahead and take an or. Part of the tanning process was to go ahead, skin the animal, put it down, have people step on it. That seemed to be part of the tanning process. Tanning is one of the things, the lamates malachis, therefore will be asur on Yontif. So it says Beis Shammai you can't do that. Nor you can't pick it up. It's muktzah like bienu elam ken yesh imo kazayis basa. You can't pick it up. It would be a muktzah unless there a kazayis basa adhering to it. Then you'd be able to pick it up. Beis Hillel matirin. Beis Hillel says that what? That it's permitted. Why is it permitted? Look at Rashi at the end, bottom line of Rashi in the bit, right? The last Rashi on the page. The shari Beis Hillel mishum ilay shavislei mimane v'lay shachet. If we don't let you go ahead and spread the hide, you won't shech the animal on Yontif. And since we want you to shech the animal because of simplest Yontif, Memela will let you do this because of that. You have to say this is the Rabbanon, guys, not the Raisa. If it was the Raisa, we won't let you do it. You have to say this Issa over here is like, it appears like it's tanning. It's not, it's an Issa the Rabbanon. So two din in the Mishnah. First din about a klisha malachta le'isser or chsar and kiss, a din of an eli, and the second din a din of tanning of a hide. Tana, vishavim, both Beis Shammai and Hillel are equal. Shem kotzav alav basar, shasel taltlei. Once you cut basar on it, it's also to carry it. In other words, you have no need for it anymore. Amrabaya machloikas be'eli. Machloikas is by a pestle. Al v'tavra garmi, but a cutting board divya kol mutta. Then it'd be mutta to go ahead and use. Furthermore, pshita, eli tanan. We said an eli. Samad tema who adin that filu tavra garmi nami. I did Tani Eli Ladia Koich the Basil that he matted about Klisham left list that feel the Dovisham left list and Nami Shari. Kamash Malone that what that's the Chiddush of Eli that it permitted. But in Achinami, you would be able to go ahead and a cutting board you'd be able to use. Ikadi Army Abaya says another teretz to the Kasha. You're saying it's Pshita, this is right, it's not so pashut. Like Nitzchel Afilu Tavra Gami Chadati. You never used it before. You never used this before. So Ma'ad the Tema Mamach Tavra Laha, you would go ahead, carry it, and then not use it. So if you carry it and don't use it, it's a tircha shleilat tzorich. So Kamash Malon, that Beis Hillel is not worried. Now 1 second, you tell me Beis Shammai is not chayish l'mluchei. In other words, you said that both moida, guys, they're both moida that you can carry a new cutting board. Good. What's the chiddush of a new cutting board? That you may decide not to use it, and if you decide not to use it, it'll be a tircha shleilat tzorich. It'll be troubling yourself without a reason on Yontif. So it's mashma when you said Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel both committed that's good. It's okay. Mashma, they both agree. You're not worried about a person changing his mind. I'm going to show you Beis Shammai does worry about a person changing his mind. So if he worries about a person changing his mind in those scenarios, he should worry over here by a new cutting board that he may change his mind and not go ahead and use the cutting board. Says the Gemara, where do we see
why is it dafka new?
What?
Why he could change his mind by an old cutting board? Why is Gemara saying a new?
Because again, it hasn't been established yet. What's a cutting board is a cutting board once you use it. But a new cutting board, maybe I want to use it for something else. It's not, it's not exactly, like we have you buying in the store cutting board. You know what I'm saying? Says the Gemara now, the following. I don't think he changed his mind for the cutting board. I guess so. Anyway, l'chol hapachas. Ubeis Shammai lechayish l'mluchei. 1 second. Batanya. Beis Shammai yoimim. Ein moilichin tovach v'sakin. You can't. Now there's a problem over here. You can't take a butcher and a knife. The butcher, if you look on the side, it says ayin. It's not. It quotes a Beis Yosef that takes it out because it's lav dafka. Because you're a person you can't control. There's a gersa I saw. Ein moilichin tovach sakin. Take out the vav, and therefore you don't take a butcher's knife. It's not speaking about what a butcher. It's speaking about only his knife. You can't take an etzel behema. Now, why is Beis Shammai not allow it? Because maybe you'll change your mind and you won't use it. Maybe you'll change your mind, you won't use it. You can't take spices and a mortar. Again, two scenarios of Beis Shammai. Mooring, you may change your mind, right? Either by the sakin or by the mortar. So why only worried over here by the cutting board? In other words, you're going to bring the animal and you say, "Oh, in a second, I don't want this animal. I want a heavier animal. I want something more. It's simplest yontiv, a more zaftik animal." Kedera nami, when it comes to spicing of a pot. I'll bring a pot that doesn't need a tavlin. In other words, there's another option. Buy spices is another option. There's another pot of food. Buy behemoth is another option, another behemoth. But by meat, if you bring a cutting board, what is the cutting board used for? Cutting meat. You have no other option. Since you shechted, of course you have to cut it up. So Memela, even Beis Shammai would be maida that you're able to take the cutting board and you're not worried about changing your mind because there is no reason to change your mind. There's no compelling reason to change your mind. Buy tavlin, maybe something else. Buy a knife, maybe something else. Buy behemoth. Okay. Beis Shammai, we said you can't put the R for people to step on because again, so you see again, he's worried. He said about tanning. Says, however, Tano, we learned, Vishavin, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel are both in agreement. Shemolchin alav basa litzli. Now, you have over here, picture this, you have a hide, and you're salting a piece of meat for roasting. Now, the halacha is, there's two ways to get out of blood. We know the blood that is absorbed in the avarim of an animal is a lav, it's an issur of malchus. We can't eat meat unless we extract the blood. There's two ways to extract blood. One, by salting it. Two, by broiling it. You're all familiar with the process of broiling liver is because salting is not enough by a liver. A liver is kulei dam, and the only way to get it out is to broil it. So what they would do is they put a little salt on the meat before they broiled it. More Taisa says for tam, right? But it's a very minimal amount of salt. So Beis Shammai Beis Hillel will be maida that if you have this piece of meat that you're going to broil and you put salt in it, that amount you could go ahead and put on have on top of a hide, and we're not worried about looking like a salting process. The shavin shemolchin lav basa litzli. Amar Abaye says Abaye leishanu el litzli. That's dafka for broiling. Aval kedera. Well, again, if you're cooking for a pot, it's got to be well salted, right? Loy. Then that you won't be able to go ahead and put on top of a hide and salt it for cooking. We learn for broiling, which is again much less salt. So how come Ashlan? If it's sli kein kedera, in other words, I'm going to broil it, but I put so much salt on that it would have sufficed for cooking, but I'm doing it for broiling, it still will be aser. You can't salt fat. Now we can't eat chaylev. Chaylev is an isakaris, but there's no isahana, and you could use chaylev as a fuel. You could use it to feed your dog. So if you would shecht on yontif and you're worrying about the chaylev putrefying, you should go ahead and preserve it the same way you preserve meat, which is by salting it. Again, there's salting for taking out blood and there's salting for preservation. Over here, the salting process of the chaylev would not be to take out the blood because it's aser anyway, and it's chaylev. The salting process over here will be to preserve it. So now, nor can you turn it over in order to keep on increasing the airspace to keep it fresh. In the name of Yeshua, they said, in fact, you could spread it on top of pegs for the purpose of what? Of keeping it moist. Amrav Masna, halach Rabbi Yeshua, that you could do that. Ikadiyami, Amrav Masna, ain't halach Rabbi Yeshua. Abishlan, the man halach Rabbi Yeshua, it's you need to tell me the chiddush. Satak, I mean, I would have thought. Yachiv Rabim, halacha Karabim, when you have malachis, machloikis, between an individual Rabbi Yeshua and the Rabim, the anonymous Chachamim, I would say the halach is like the Chachamim, Kamashman, the halach is Kiyachid, in this case, the halach is like the Yachid, so Rav Masna would have told me a chiddush. Elmandian ain't halacha, like the man the halach is not like Rabbi Yeshua, what's the chiddush? Pshita halach is not Rabbi Yeshua. Again, halach, machloikis, Yachiv Rabim, the halach is like a rabbin. Yachid Rabbim, Lachid Rabbim. Some other tema, Mistaber time of Rabbi Yeshua. It makes sense of Yeshua. Why? Why does it make sense? Guys, maybe if we don't let you salt the chaylev, maybe you're going to withhold the act of going ahead and shechting, right? Very geschmack. I might think the following. If I don't permit you to go ahead and salt the fat, mimana, you'll hold back, you won't shech the animal. Again, they had to use up every part of the animal, guys. There was no preservation. There wasn't glatmot. There wasn't freezes. There wasn't that. I mean, hey, guys, you ever notice I have a freezer in my living room? My dining room, I have a freezer. That's when the balabus doesn't let you use the basement, so I have a freezer. Anyway, Just thought I'd share that with you. So Kamash Malon, that Kamash Malon, that no, the halacha is not like that. We're not worried about Simchas Yontif. We won't let you. Now, it's interesting. This Isser is very interesting. I'll show you why in a second. We'll get back to it in a second. Remind me to get you back here. What's the difference that Basil permitted it? Basil said the following: if we don't let you go ahead and walk on top of the or you may refrain from shechting the animal. So it was permitted. So why over here won't we let you salt the chaylev? Maybe you won't shech the animal. In other words, you see that this havamina is a maskana. The havamina that you say that we don't let you shech the chaylev, you may not come to not shech the animal. Kamash Malon, we're not worried. What do you mean not worried? What do you mean you're not worried? We let you put the or in front of people to walk on because you want them to go ahead and shech the animal. So you see, you are worried. So what's the difference by chaylev where you're not worried and by or you are worried and we let you shech the animal? What's the difference? Amid Beis, Hasam over there leimucha milsa mishum why nechazi lemizgaleh. You know, if you shecht it for the purpose of the or, if you put it down on the ground, there's no raya that you put it down on the ground for people to step on. They used to sit on these things. They'd sit, Rashi bought, they used to sit on their knees. This is before, knee replacement. They would go ahead and sit on their knees. So they would use it for other reasons. So Mela, if you're going to go ahead and put it down, it's not show clearly that you're doing it for tanning. Mashen came by Chaylev, there's no other game in town. Because obviously you can't do anything else with the chaylev. By the chaylev, my time is surely Rabbanon. Why the Rabbanon permit me to go ahead and shech this animal? In order that it shouldn't spoil. It shouldn't spoil. What's the difference that spread it out? What's the difference of salting it? So therefore, if we let you go ahead and spread it, go ahead and let you expose the chaylev to the ear, like Rabbi Yeshua said, putting it on your seidos, you may come to salt it. A person can go ahead and salt a bunch of pieces together. Mashma, you can't do it separately. Even though you need one, you can go ahead and salt a bunch. He would go ahead and do it. He would do a trick. He would do one. He goes, "Oh, I don't want this one." They would do the next one. I don't want this one. Do the next one. Machlokes is whether if he's arguing or not. Who's being makel here? Who's being machmir here? Does Rav Achabar Ad hold that you can't do it all together, and therefore the only way to do it is that way? Well, no. And the Tanakhama says you won't be able to do that way. Either way, now the rush brings the reason is that there's not a problem by salting different pieces because there's no din of ibud be'oichlin. There's no din of tanning in food. There's no din of tanning in food. So the question is, if there's no din in tanning in food, so what's the problem with the fat? Guys, fat is a food. We just can't eat it, right? But it's a food. You can eat it. We can eat the fat of a chaya. So it's a food. The reason we don't eat it is because it's asa. So if you're telling me over here you can salt pieces of meat because the meat, in fact, what is ein ibud ba'oichlin, there's no din of tanning in food, so there should be no din of tanning in fat, in forbidden fat. So why in the world is that permitted? Sarachian says the Shimmer Sam Alacha. Now you must skin on Sham, the ain't ibud ba'oichlin. In the Sech Shabbos, there's no ibud ba'oichlin. V'chalav im hein, and chaylev is eichlin. It's food and fat is food. El shas leichlan. Ubetoyser sham avur de'ena asa elam d'Rabbanon. This whole issa of ibud b'eichlin is only the Rabbanon. V'gam hachamayir binyan issa d'Rabbanon. Also over here, it's an issa d'Rabbanon. And Carbon Salos brings a Ravon who says that's because it appears if you're abed. It appears if you are salting, but not that it's really a chiv daraisa because there's ein ibud ba'oichlin. Says the Mishnah. Now, they used to have a storefront. They'd have windows, and in the windows, they put shutters. Those shutters, they performed a dual purpose. One, they would use locked at night to keep people out going to the store. And two, they would take them out during the day and use them as a table to put their wares on in front of their stores. Good, that's what they did. So a dual purpose. It says Beis Shammai and Yontif, you can't take it off. You can't take it off. It's considered stira. It's considered demolishing. You're like you're demolishing a building. It says Beis Hillel, l'chayra al simchas Yontif, people won't have wares for Yontif. Again, we're speaking, you're not setting a price, you're not giving money, doing it by shroy. There's ways to go ahead. There's a workaround for the business process. So over here, the same thing. So Beis Shammai says, because of stira demolishing. But he permitted you even not only to go ahead and take it down, but to put it back. Now, this is key to the sugya, guys. Beis Hillel, putting it back should be certainly also. There's no reason, there's no simplest yontif in putting it back. But the reason why you can put it back is we don't let you put it back, it may come to not take it off in the first place. And that's going to be a problem with simplest yontif. So this is a sugya of, we'll let you do something in the end because of the beginning. We'll let you, the sugya, guys, that's the key to the sugya. We'll let you do something in the end because we don't want you to refrain from doing something in the beginning, okay? That's going to be the sugya. That's going to be the sugya. Says the Gemara. My treason. What are you speaking about? When we say treason, what are treason? What are we speaking about? Says the Gemara, we're speaking about the shutters of a store. Okay, good. Now, the Ula, three things the Chachamim permitted in the end because of the beginning. They permitted you to do something in the end because of the beginning. Guys, will permit you to spread the hide in order for you to shech the animal. Will permit you to put it back because you want you to take it out in the beginning to sell stuff as Simchas Yantif. In the Beis HaMikdash, now there's a bandage, guys, and a bandage is a problem of memachik. It was a bandage with a dressing on it. We had it in Masechta Eruvin, Shabbos. You put it on, it's also on Shabbos because it's smoothing. Now, a kohen who has a wound, if we won't let him go ahead and return it, he may stop doing the avoid in the first place. So we'll let you go ahead and put it back on in order what? To take it off, to do the avodah. The Rachba Omar Rebbe Yehuda, and Rachba says in the name of Rebbe Yehuda, Rashi is very interesting, Rashi over here, historically, an Amoira in Bavel was never called Rebbe. There was no smicha in Bavel, guys. There was no smicha in Bavel, so all the people who were in Bavel were called Rav. Rav Asi, not Rebbe Asi, Rav Asi, Rav Ami, not Rebbe Asi. So how can it be Rebbe Yehuda? So Rashi is forced to say that this, since it was this Ikka Rebbe, is called Rebbe. Very, very interesting. The few Rashis in this Masechta are very, very strange that usually you don't see. We had earlier about that historical Rashi spoke out about I don't remember. Anyway, weiter. So says the Gemara weiter. So Rachba says in the name of Rav Asi. What does he say in the name of Rebbe Yehuda? A fourth place. Even someone who opens a barrel and he begins and begins kneading the dough al gabe regel. I'll leave it there, Yehuda, the Amma Yigmar or the Amma Yigmar. Okay. A little hakdam is needed to understand this halacha. The Chachamim were geyser on Amaratzim that they're tamei. We have no way of knowing the tamei, but we know they're not so makbid in tumah b'taira. So they were geyser. If I'm a chaver, that means a person who's makbid tumah b'taira. So therefore, anything they would touch would be tamei. They removed this gezer at the time of the regel. People loyal regel, the Amaratzim would touch things as busha of mamash, as busha of the Amaretz. They removed it, so it's considered tahar. What about if they touch something and then the regel's over? So let's say I might go ahead and say the following: I'm not bothering opening up a barrel of wine because if the Amaretz touches this wine during the regel when it's mutter, and then after regel retrospectively it's going to be us tamei, I'm not going to open it up. So says Rabbi Yehuda, it's even tahar after the regel. Why? Why was Tori after regel? Because he wanted you to go ahead and do. So he matted something in the end to permit it in the beginning. Fuad didn't do the same thing. Now, going back over the three dinim, here's the problem. Ul is an Amayra. What's he telling me that the Mishnah did not tell me? What's he telling me that the Mishnah did not tell me? So he told me, that you could go ahead and spread or leather in front of to be walked upon. Tanina, it's a Mishnah. Why do I need him to go ahead and tell it to me? It's a Mishnah. Mao says, I'll tell you why. Mao the reason the Tamaya of the Mishnah, the Beis Hillel, Mishum the Chasi Lemazgo Layu. I might think the reason you could do it is because you can sit on it, like we said, Mukach, maybe people think it's for sitting, and not because it's, in other words, not because it's also for Titan, but feeling Erev Yontif Nami, and even if you did it Erev Yontif, you'd be able to spread it. Guys, if to sit on it, so there should be no difference whether it's Shechted on Yontif or Shechted Erev Yontif. If it's to go ahead and work it, and the reason I'm letting you Shechted on Yontif is the use on Yontif is to ensure that you're going ahead and slaughter the animal, because I'm worried about what? Simchas Yontif. Very good. So Mashen Kein Erev Yontif. Kamash Malon, that what? Hetiru Soifa Mishum Tchilasai. The Yontif in the Erev Yontif light. Kamash Malon, we're mattering to go ahead and shech to walk on the or, because we want you to shech the animal. On the other hand, where the animal is shechted Erev Yontif, we won't let you put that out. That's the Chiddush of Ula. Going to the next case, Trisi Chananiyos. Ula said you can go ahead and put back the Chananiyos. Nami Tanina, we also learned that. Beisilah Matirin, Afla Hachse. Beisilah said you can even put it back. So Mad the time the Beisilah Mishandain, Binyan Bekalim, and Steer Bekalim. I feel but bottom Nami. I might think there's no Binyan Steer Bekalim at all. And I might think even in a house you'll be able to put it back. Kamash Malon in a house you can't put it back. The Tira Sleifer Mishum Tchilason. That what we want you to take it off to go ahead and sell your wares, and therefore we'll let you return it. The chanuyas in the bottom loy. After chanuyas would let it, but not what, not bottom. Also the din of putting back a dressing on a kayin in the migdash. Machzir and retia ben migdash says in the Sechta Erevin. Avloi ben Medina. I would have thought that the reason why, since it's only the rabbanan in nature, and there's no rabbanan din in the Migdash, I would say any kohen could go ahead and put back a dressing. Even a kohen is not doing the avodah. Will permit you to put it back in the end in order that you'll take it off in the first place. Why are you taking it in the first place? It should be a chatzitza between you and the avodah. The bar avodah in, la bar avodah loy. Okay. Now the last case, Peseches Chavisai, opening up Chavisai, Nami Tinina. Peseches Chavisai, Umasal Bisasai. Someone who opens up a barrel, someone who goes ahead and begins to go ahead and knead dough agav regel. So what's the fourth case of rachba? I might think that it's mamish tar gansen, and even after the regel will be tar. And even if you begin using it, I would say that it's tar. Kamash one, if you began in, then you could go ahead and it's tar, but if you didn't begin not, okay. For Ula, my time why didn't Ula include Rachb's din of Pesach b'Chavius? Says, well, plukta like Kamari. This machlokes Rabbi Yehuda Chacham, he wasn't dealing with machlokes. And Fred, what are you talking about? Hanachnami plukta in all these trisin and everything you described there, trisin and or and Matia, these all machlokes. Machlokes Beishamay B'Makam says, well, Beishamay B'Makam Beis Hillel ain't a Mishnah. That's not considered a machlokes. Says the Gemara, Masnisin L'Kei Tana. Mishnah is not like the following Tana. The Tanya, Amr Shimon Ben Elazar, Moedim Beishamay Beis Hillel, Shem Esalkanis Atrisim B'Yontif. The moedim that you can take it off. So now even Beishamay will be moedim you can take it off. Good, and our Mishnah says you can't. Like Nechelku El Hachser regarding returning it. Shem Beishamay Oimim Ein Machzirin Beis Hillel Oimim Machzirin. So Pashtus, it's not like our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says, Beis Shammai says you can't go ahead and take it off. This Brisa says you could. The Medam Amurim, when do they argue? B'shiesh lehem tzir. That's when it has a pivot. Aval ein lehem tzir. If there's no pivot, if it's just a smooth, then dibya kol mutter. It would not be considered demolishing. It would not be considered putting it back. In other words, your machlokes would not be to put it back. Putting it back would be binyan, right? When is it considered binyan? When it has a pivot. You have to fit it into the holes in the shutter in the house or the store. But if it doesn't have a pivot, then everyone said you can put it back. Now we have says the Gemara about Tanya the opposite. When do they say you can't put it back? That's when it doesn't have its seer. Then it's a machlokes. If it has its seer, even base pillow would be asa. So we have a problem. One place has said it has its seer, it's a machlokes. Another place to say it has its seer, it's asa. Some Rabbi know. View it as this way, guys. Look at this. A pivot means I have something here on top and something here on the bottom, like something like then there's one coming out of here. So here's where everyone say it's asa. If it's coming out of the side, everyone would hold it's asa. Says I'm gonna buy it. Everyone say it's asa. If it doesn't have its seer kol ikka, everyone's saying it's muta. In other words, there is no machlokes between these two gerses. The two gerses are both correct. Keep pligi. When's the machlokes? When it has a shear be'emsa. In other words, if it has on top and on bottom, everyone says it's asa. If it's on top, nothing and nothing, everyone says it's muta. Question: if it has minat sad, do we say it's like none at all, or do we say it's like two pivots on top? Says the Gemara, keep pligi b'sheishem seer be'emsa. Amid Aleph, mas savar beishamei holds gazrin and seer be'emsa at seer minat sad. We'll be geyser and say if we have, I said if I have seer on the middle, I may come to go ahead and if it has seer on top, I'll use that, and that's asa. So when the Brisa says that it's asa, that's what it's speaking about. Umasa v'loy gazrinan. One says muta, that's we're speaking about its seer that doesn't have a pivot. So let's go back inside and stick this in. Okay. Amr of Shimon ben Elazar, Moedim Beishaim Beis Hillel, Shemesalkin as a trees and beyontif, Leinechlu el hachzir Shebesham Yoimrim, Ein Machzirin, Beis Hillel Machmazirin. B'medamar Murim, B'sheyesh Lehem Seer. When do we say that it's asur, that everyone holds it's asur? That's when there's its seer. In other words, when they argue is when it has its seer from the side, and that's where they're going to argue. Aval ein lem seer, if they don't have its seer at all, they're called muta. So that's where you heard that then from. Vatanya b'medamarum b'shein lem seer. When do we say that they argue is when it doesn't have its seer? Aval yesh lem seer, they're called asur. That's speaking when the seer is on top and the bottom. And the argument seer from the side, and the machlokes is it's seer from the side. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you, Rabbi.